I work as a night shift nurse and I've been doing it for over a decade. I thought I had seen everything, but a few months ago something changed. It felt like the hospital was alive in a way I didn't understand. I wanted to shake it off, but I couldn't. One night at midnight, I was doing my rounds. The halls were mostly quiet. I could hear the occasional beeping of machines. That's when I saw a group of patients huddled in a corner of a room. They were whispering amongst themselves, their eyes darting to an empty space. I thought it was just medication messing with them. I shook my head and moved on, but it wasn't just me. Sarah, one of the other nurses, said she heard giggles coming from rooms where no one was. I thought it was just the night shift getting to us. Still, the feeling didn't go away. Every time I walked past those rooms, I felt a chill. I couldn't explain it. A few nights later, I entered the supply room to get some gauze. I thought I had left it right there. But it was gone. I checked the counter, the shelves, and even the drawers. My heart started racing as I searched. Maybe I misplaced it, I thought. I stepped out, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Whispers echoed in my mind, haunting me. Then came the strangest event. We had a patient, a man in his 60s. He had a heart condition. I remember him well because he always joked around and made everyone laugh. One night, I went in to check on him, but he was gone. The night staff said he never checked in. Confused, I asked the other nurses. They all remembered him, but there was no record of him being there. I couldn't understand how that happened. One particularly tense night, I stepped into the dimly lit hallway. I stopped. I felt like someone was behind me. I slowly turned around, but no one was there. The hall was empty, but it felt alive. I glanced into a corner and thought I could hear whispers. My breath caught in my throat. It felt wrong, like the hospital was hiding something. Then I heard a soft voice call my name. It was faint but clear. I knew I wasn't imagining it. I rushed back to the nurse's station, my thoughts racing. My skin prickled. I felt like I was being drawn into something I couldn't understand. The whispers wouldn't leave my mind. Now I'm left wondering what was real. Was it my exhaustion or something darker? Each night that passes, I think about those eerie events. What were those whispers saying? My heart races with every thought. I try to brush it off, but I know that I feel watched. I can't explain any of it. It haunts me, pulling me deeper into a mystery that I may never solve. That night, I was determined to shake off the strange occurrences. I had been doing this long enough. I wouldn't let fear get the best of me. I walked into the break room, grabbing a cup of coffee, hoping the caffeine would help me stay alert and grounded. But even the familiar scent of a fresh brew didn't erase the unease that clung to me. As I sat down at the small table, I overheard Sarah talking to another nurse, Lisa. They were whispering, glancing around as if they were afraid someone would overhear. I couldn't help but lean in. I swear I saw her, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. In room 203, she looked right at me like she was trying to say something. Lisa nodded, her eyes wide. You're not the only one. I saw her too. My ears perked up. They were talking about the same ghostly figure that the patients had mentioned. Who did you see? I asked, breaking into their conversation. They both jumped a bit, startled to hear my voice. It was as if I had walked in on a secret club. You remember the patient who went missing? Sarah said, her eyes darting to the door. The one everyone claims never existed? They say he had a sister. I think that's her. Have you guys seen her? Like, really seen her? I asked, feeling a chill run up my spine. I wanted them to say no. Sarah shook her head, but Lisa piped up. I saw her reflection in a window last week. She was staring into the hallway. I thought I was seeing things. Just a flash. But I swear she looked sad. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I had to know more. What does she look like? She's in a white gown, I think, Sarah said. Long hair. Never seems to really be there, like she's fading or stuck in a different time. I shifted in my seat, the overwhelming sense of fear creeping back in. What if she's trying to tell us something? As my shift wore on, I couldn't shake their words from my mind. Between patient checks, every sound seemed amplified. I started to feel like I was being watched again. I tried to concentrate, but the whispers returned, this time more distinct. I heard phrases like, help us, and find her. I decided I had to confront my fears and see room 203 for myself. I slipped out of the nurse's station, my heart pounding with anticipation and dread. The closer I got, the more the air felt thick, almost charged with electricity. I stood before the door and hesitated. Taking a deep breath, I opened it slowly. The room was dark. The only light came from the small lamp on the bedside table. I stepped inside, my heart racing. It felt like the walls were closing in as I scanned the room. That's when I saw it. On the floor next to the bed was an old photograph, slightly crumpled. I knelt to pick it up, and chills ran down my spine. It was a picture of a woman in a white gown, standing next to a man who looked familiar. And then a realization hit me. The man was the patient who had vanished. But before I could fully register what it all meant, the temperature dropped. I could see my breath in the air. Then, just as quickly, the lights flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed me whole. I stood frozen. Something shifted in the air around me. A presence I could feel but not see. I gulped down my fear, desperate to figure out what was happening. "Please, help us." A whisper echoed in the dark, sending me into a panic. What had I stumbled into? I stared into the thick darkness, my pulse racing. The whisper faded, but the air felt heavier, an unyielding pressure around me. I blinked, trying to adjust to the absence of light, but all I could see was the faint outline of the furniture and the ghostly form of the bed. Just then, a sound sliced through the silence, a faint rustle, like fabric brushing against itself. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I took a cautious step back, my foot brushing against the cold floor. But fear rooted me to the spot. I considered the door. Should I leave? But what if the whispers were right? What if someone truly needed help? "Hello?" I called, my voice shaking. My words hung in the air. I felt like a fool for thinking I could confront whatever was in this room. The rustling grew louder, accompanied by a soft, sorrowful cry. "Please." It wasn't just a voice. It was a plea. I felt sick, every instinct in me screaming to run, but something tethered me there. I needed to know what was happening. Suddenly, a sliver of light flickered through the window, momentarily illuminating the room. In that brief flash, I saw her. Standing at the foot of the bed was the woman in the photograph. Her long hair floated as if underwater, and her white gown shimmered eerily in the glow. I felt my breath catch. She stared right at me, her eyes filled with a desperate sadness. Then, just as quickly, the light vanished, plunging me back into darkness. Panic surged anew. I turned, ready to bolt, but the whisper returned, louder this time. "Help us." Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. "What do you need?" I shouted into the blackness, hoping for an answer. In that moment, the temperature dropped further. I could see my breath, and the chill seeped into my bones. I heard something shift behind me, a soft footfall against the floorboards. My skin crawled. "Please help us," the voice came again, but it was clearer now. It echoed in my mind, a rhythmic chant in a language I couldn't quite grasp. I turned, scanning the room frantically. There had to be something, some clue, to explain this horror. My eyes landed back on the photograph I had dropped when I first entered. The floor felt uneven beneath me as I knelt, groping through the darkness, until my fingers found the edge of the worn picture. As I pulled it close, images began to weave together in my mind. The missing patient, his sister, the connections of their anguish. "What happened to you?" I whispered to the room, feeling utterly helpless. Then, with a swift gust, the air exploded with a rush that sent the photograph flying out of my grasp. It fluttered toward the corner, landing gently as the room filled with a blinding light. Shadows danced, and I blinked against the sudden brightness. Standing in that light, I saw a flicker of movement behind the figure of the woman in white. A shadow loomed behind her, dark and formless. Panic turned to terror. "What are you?" I yelled. Just as the entity moved closer, its form solidifying, the light fizzled out. Darkness consumed the room once more, and then the whispers returned, rising into a frantic chorus of, "Find her!" I stumbled back, my heart racing even faster. I had to escape before the shadows could reach me. But now I was afraid of more than just what I couldn't see. Someone, or something, was waiting for me. With newfound determination, I pushed forward. I was not leaving until I understood this haunting. A dark secret lingered in this hospital, one I needed to uncover before it was too late. I took a deep breath, the chill still prickling my skin. It felt wrong to stay in that room, but I couldn't bring myself to leave, not yet. The urge to understand what I had witnessed pulled me back in. The shadows felt alive, swirling with secrets I needed to uncover. I blinked against the darkness, trying to get my bearings. My heart pounded as I moved closer to the bed, its presence heavy and oppressive. I needed more than just words. I needed a way to connect with whatever lingered here. "Show me," I whispered, half in desperation, half in hope. In response, the temperature dropped further. My breath billowed before me like a ghost. I glanced around, and to my surprise, a glint of something caught my eye on the nightstand. It was a small metal key, partly hidden beneath the dust. As I reached for it, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony begging for my attention. "Find her! Unlock!" I picked up the key, its cold surface sending a shiver through my fingers. Heart racing, I wondered what door it opened. I had seen no locked doors. Yet somehow, I knew I needed to discover its purpose. "What door? Where?" I asked the empty darkness, gripping the key tightly. The light flickered back briefly, illuminating the corner of the room, hinting at something I couldn't quite see. Before I could process it, the key slipped from my grasp, clattering against the floor. A wave of resentment washed over me as I crouched to retrieve it. But when I looked up, the room had changed. The furniture seemed to shift, like it was rearranging itself just beyond my perception. Panic pulsed through me. "No way!" I steadied myself and stood, eyes darting across the space. I felt as if I were losing my grip on reality. And then I heard it. A soft cry that echoed through the room, more distinct this time. "Help us. Please." "What do you mean?" I shouted into the void, feeling a gnawing fear turn my stomach. The voice spoke again, but it came from behind me. I spun around, heart hammering. Suddenly, the door swung open, creaking ominously. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I couldn't resist the pull of curiosity. I crept toward the open doorway, the light spilling in from the hallway. It was brighter than what I had witnessed inside, a stark contrast to the claustrophobic darkness that had enveloped me. Outside, the corridor was empty, but I heard it again. "Find her." It rang in my ears, sending chills down my spine. Whoever, or whatever, was trapped here, wanted me to keep searching. As I stepped into the hallway, I noticed something gleaming on the floor. A familiar bracelet tangled in dust and shadows. It looked just like the one the woman had worn in the photograph. My heart sank. "What happened to you?" I thought, gazing back at the room, now shrouded in darkness. The whispers wrapped around me, more frantic than ever. "Find her! Unlock!" With the cold key in my hand, and the bracelet glinting softly in the light, I faced the hallway ahead. I was about to descend deeper into a mystery fraught with danger. Whatever awaited me could either reveal the truth or destroy everything I believed. I took a step forward. I knew I wouldn't be turning back. The hallway stretched out before me, dimly lit by flickering overhead lights. Each click and hum of the fluorescent bulbs felt like an intrusion in the silence that enveloped me. I clutched the key, fearful it might slip from my grip again, and bent down to pick up the bracelet. It felt as though the weight of her story rested in my hands. "Why are you here?" I whispered to it, a futile attempt to connect, to understand. I slipped it into my pocket, the metal cool against my skin. I moved cautiously down the corridor, each step echoed, amplifying my fidgeting nerves. The urge to run was strong, but the call to find answers pulled me deeper. As I approached the end of the hallway, I noticed a door slightly ajar, the wood warped and splintering at the edges. "Is this where you want me to go?" I asked the room, hoping for a sign. The air felt thicker, charged with expectation. I pushed the door open, expecting to feel the chill deepen, but instead a wave of warmth washed over me. Inside was a small room filled with medical supplies and half-broken equipment. I glanced around, searching for anything out of the ordinary, That's when I spotted it. A file cabinet standing in the corner, one drawer slightly ajar. Curious, I walked over and pulled it open. Inside lay folders stacked high with paperwork all covered in dust. I scanned the top file, reading the name, Elena Mitchell. My heart raced again as I flipped through the pages, each one detailing her life, her medical history. Yet there were gaps, missing information that hinted at a darker story. She had been admitted multiple times, but there were no records of her discharge. "What happened to you, Elena?" I muttered, my curiosity growing darker. Suddenly, I heard a faint ringing sound, almost like a telephone. I whipped around, scanning the room, but there was no phone in sight. The sound persisted, echoing all around me. My heart raced, and I felt an urgent pressure on my chest. Then it hit me. The whispers. They had warped into something different, no longer just soft pleas. They were now commanding, urgent. "Find her. Unlock." I stepped back toward the door, ready to bolt, but the handle rattled fiercely as if someone was on the other side. I froze. Every instinct told me to flee, but the need to discover what was happening kept my feet planted. "Who's there?" I demanded, the tremor in my voice betraying my fear. The chatter outside became louder, muffled voices mixed with the cries for help. My hand tightened around the key, feeling its reassuring coldness in my palm. I would have to be brave. With a burst of courage, I turned the doorknob and pulled the door wide open. To my shock, the hallway was now lined with figures, shadows lurking near the walls, their faces obscured but their intentions clear. They were watching, waiting for me to make a decision. That's when I saw it. The door at the far end of the corridor, marked with the same symbol as the key. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. The reason I was here. The answer I had been searching for. Before I could step forward, a figure broke from the shadows, and my heart dropped. Someone was blocking my way. My mouth went dry as I tried to make sense of this new development. "Stop! You shouldn't be here," the voice warned, a mix of urgency and dread. "You don't know what you're looking for." My heart raced as I tried to assess the situation. What did they know, and how were they connected to the mystery I had unwittingly stumbled into? I felt a surge of dread course through me as I stood frozen in front of the figure. They appeared gaunt, shadows clinging to them like a second skin. I could barely make out their features, but their eyes were wide and desperate. "Please, you have to leave," they insisted, stepping closer. "This place isn't what you think it is." My heart raced. "What do you mean? What is this place?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. Before they could answer, the air shifted. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, swirling around us, echoing concerns I could barely decipher. I glanced over my shoulder at the door at the end of the corridor. It felt like it was calling to me, but the figure blocked my only path. "You don't understand," they continued, their voice lower, more urgent. "If you unlock that door, it won't end well for you. Not for anyone." I was torn. Every instinct told me to run, but my need for answers clashed with my fear. "Who are you? Why do you care?" I pressed, my voice softer than I intended. A flicker of emotion passed over their face. Fear, perhaps. "I was like you once. I thought I could find answers, but that door, it leads to a truth that should stay buried." Just then, behind the figure, one of the shadowy forms shifted, inching closer. I felt a jolt of panic. "Get away from them!" I shouted, but my voice felt thin against the thickening tension. The figure spun around, eyes wide. "You have to trust me! Please, just go!" they urged, their voice now tinged with desperation. But from the corner of my eye, I caught a glint of something shiny, a weapon. My pulse quickened. "I'm not afraid of you," I bluffed, although the shake in my voice betrayed me. "Think. You can't fight what you don't understand." The figure reached toward me, but I flinched back, my instinct screaming to avoid contact. Then, as if echoing their cries, one of the shadows lunged forward. The figure stumbled back, but I had no time to consider my next move. My body moved on instinct. I pushed past them and dashed down the hallway towards the door with the symbol. I had to know what lay behind it. With every step, the whispers intensified. They felt like an electric current, wrapping around my thoughts, fueling my urgency. As I reached for the knob, a sudden chill swept through the air, freezing me in place. "Don't!" the figure shouted from behind, but I was already turning the key, the metal cold against my palm. The door clicked, and with a push, it swung open. I was met with darkness, thick and heavy. I took a step inside, heart pounding. What I found next sent a jolt of fear through my entire being. It wasn't empty. A faint silhouette stood in the far corner, motionless. I squinted, but before I could discern any features, the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. Panic surged within me as I turned around, but the door wouldn't budge. Now I stood trapped, enveloped by darkness, and the only sound was the heavy breathing near the back of the room. I wasn't alone. "Who's there?" I choked out, every rational thought crashing around me. I felt like a deer caught in headlights, waiting for the inevitable. I took a step back, trying to decipher the figure, but all I could do was stand and wait for the next chilling moment to unfold. I felt my heart race as the heavy breathing grew closer. It was no longer just a sound, it was a presence, an unsettling reminder that I was trapped with something unknown. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice out again. "Who are you?" Silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The silhouette didn't move, but I could sense it watching me, studying me. I took another hesitant step back, my feet fumbling for some unseen escape. Then the figure shifted slightly and I could just make out a glint of eyes reflecting what little light there was. "Help me," it whispered, the words cutting through the silence like a knife. "Help you," I echoed, confusion flooding my mind. But before I could process the request, I noticed something on the ground next to the figure, a small object, maybe a letter or something more gruesome. I leaned in, curious despite my better judgment. As I squinted through the darkness, I recognized it as a locket, dull and tarnished. Its presence felt oddly significant. Without thinking, I reached toward it, but a sudden rush of cold air blew through the room, making me shiver. The silhouette recoiled, its voice rising in alarm. "No, don't touch that." I jerked my hand back. "Why not? What is it?" I demanded, fear saturating my tone. "It's a key," the figure said, their voice trembling now. "And once you pick it up, you'll become part of it. This room, it holds memories, painful memories. You'll start to see them." My mind reeled with this revelation. Memories? What did they mean? I couldn't understand how a simple locket could be tied to anything so sinister. Yet something deep inside warned me that knowledge could come at a terrible cost. "Enough!" I snapped, my voice ringing out boldly despite my terror. "Stop this! Who are you? What do you want from me?" The figure took a deep breath, visibly shaking. "I'm someone who found the locket long ago. I thought I could unlock the truth, but I wasn't ready. Now, I'm trapped here because of my choices," they confessed. "And if you take it, you'll be trapped too." Every instinct was screaming at me to run, yet the weight of curiosity pressed down. The door was still shut, and I had no way out. "You're saying I can't go back?" "Not without understanding what you're getting into," they replied. "You'll have to face the truth, the dark truth of what happened here." As the words sank in, dread twisted in my stomach. I looked at the locket, uncertainty clawing at me. Then a flash of light flickered in the corner of my vision, and I turned towards it, pulse quickening. The shadows around me began to shift, swirling like smoke, and I felt the temperature drop even further. "Please," the figure begged. "If you don't want this fate, you have to leave now." But as I moved towards the door, an ominous sound filled the space. It was a low rumble, like thunder rolling just beneath my feet. The room seemed to pulse with life. I glanced back, a mixture of fear and resolve surging within me. I couldn't turn my back on this mystery. That's when I saw it. A shadow breaking free, stretching toward me with claw-like fingers. I screamed, but it was drowned out by the growing chaos. The whispers intensified, overlapping and rising to a deafening crescendo. Now I had no choice but to confront whatever waited in that darkness. The shadow lunged at me with a swiftness that made my heart stop. I barely had time to react before it was upon me. The cold swept through my body, chilling me to the bone. I stumbled back, pressing against the wall, searching for anything solid to ground me. The figure seemed to shift, caught somewhere between panic and desperation. "You don't understand," they shouted, but their voice was nearly lost amidst the cacophony of whispers echoing through the room. "You need to leave this place." I felt paralyzed, a wave of fear washing over me. My instincts battled against my curiosity. I wanted to scream again, to demand answers, but nothing came out. Instead, I stood frozen, my mind racing with the prospect of what the shadows might reveal. "Take the locket," the figure urged. "It's the only way to be free." The shadow lurked closer, stretching its dark tendrils like they were reaching for my soul. My breath quickened. I couldn't just stand there. Gathering what little courage I had left, I dashed sideways, keeping my eyes fixed on the locket. I knew I had to know, had to understand what bound me to this nightmarish scene. In one swift motion, I reached for the locket, the metal cool against my palm as I grabbed it. Instantly, a shockwave surged through me, causing the room to blur. Images flooded my mind, faces twisted in pain, flashes of laughter turning to screams, and overwhelming despair that seemed to seep from the walls themselves. I stumbled back, dropping the locket, but a binding force held me in place. "Why are you doing this?" I gasped, realizing the figure was no longer just a silhouette. It was contorting, merging with the darkness that surrounded it. "It's too late," their voice echoed, now layered with something darker. "You've become part of the memories. They will consume you." Suddenly the whispers formed words, taunting me. "Join us. Join us." It was a chorus of despair, and I felt the pull of whatever lay hidden in the shadows grow stronger. The room felt alive, its pain wrapping around me like a vice, squeezing tighter, panic ignited within me. I shook my head, trying to block the voices. I couldn't let them take me. I forced my legs to move, finally breaking away from the force that held me captive. I sprinted towards the door, desperate for escape. The shadow lunged again, but I barely dodged it, feeling the air shift as its claws missed me by inches. I could feel warmth creeping back into my limbs as I reached the door. My hand grasped the handle, twisting it with frantic determination. Would it budge, or would I be locked in this nightmare forever? The door swung open, revealing a winding hallway. My heart raced with a mix of hope and dread. Before I could step through, I took one last glance back into the room. The figure's shadow now loomed larger, an angry mass swirling in the darkness. "I'll find you again," it howled, its voice merging with the abominable whispers. I stumbled out into the hall, slamming the door behind me. I could barely breathe, anxiety pulsing through my veins. As I leaned against the cold, hard surface, I glimpsed the locket on the ground one last time. It shimmered faintly, like a distant star fading into the night, leaving me with troubling questions. Right then my phone buzzed in my pocket, jolting me back to the moment. I fished it out, my heart sinking as the screen lit up with a message. "We need to talk. You've seen something." That was when I realized I hadn't escaped this nightmare at all. I stepped into the dimly lit hallway, my heart racing loud enough to drown out the muffled sounds that lay beyond. The air felt thick, bordering on suffocating, and I resisted the urge to glance back. I began to walk, my feet moving faster than my mind could catch up. As I turned a corner, the buzz of fluorescent lights flickered above me, casting eerie shadows against the walls. I needed to find a way out, anything to escape the memories that had woven themselves into my mind like a terrifying tapestry. I thought about the locket and what it might unlock. It had to mean something beyond the horror I had just experienced. Suddenly, I heard a rustle behind me. I froze, my instincts screaming at me to turn and run. Was it the same shadow? Was it pursuing me? I held my breath and inched toward the nearest exit. The dim light showed an emergency exit sign at the end of the corridor. Freedom felt so close, yet panic clouded my thoughts. But then a familiar voice cut through the stillness. "You shouldn't be here," it said, breaking my concentration. I turned slowly to see a nurse I recognized from earlier shifts, her face pale and drawn. "Rose, what's going on?" I asked, my fear rising again. "What do you know?" She glanced behind me, her eyes wide with terror. "They know you're here. You need to leave, and you need to take this seriously. You should have never come back." "Who knows I'm here?" I felt a chill run down my spine. "The ones trapped in the memories, the spirits. They're restless." Her voice trembled, and I could see the sweat glistening on her forehead. "You found the locket, didn't you?" I nodded, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. "I dropped it back there, but it felt like—" "No," she interrupted, her voice sharp. "You can't let it near you again. If it binds you to them, you might not get out." Before I could respond, a serious expression crossed her face. "We have to move," she urged, grabbing my arm. The urgency in her eyes made my heart race even faster. We turned to run when I heard a chorus of whispers echoing through the corridor, growing louder but unintelligible. It was as if the shadows were calling out my name. I felt them tugging at the edges of my mind, and the fear wrapped around me again. I made it to the stairwell with Rose, but she hesitated at the door. "We can't just go. You need to understand," she said, her voice lowered to almost a whisper. "There's more you're missing. This building has a history. People like you." "What do you mean, like me?" I shot back, panic slipping into my tone. "Those who see things, the ones who might awaken those memories." She shook her head, her expression pleading. Just then, the whispers surged through the air. "Join us. Come back." I could almost feel their cold fingers trailing against my skin. The shadows from the walls crept closer, and I knew we had to get out. "Now!" I yelled, pushing through the door. My heart pounded as I sprinted down the stairs, Rose right behind me. I could feel the darkness closing in, but something shoved me forward, driving me to escape whatever reckoning awaited us. Then, everything went dark. I jolted awake, gasping for breath as I blinked into the glare of fluorescent lights. For a moment I thought I was back in the hospital, but the sterile scent and the beeping machines told me otherwise. I was in an abandoned room, clothes damp with sweat, heart still racing from the haunting memories and shadows that clung to me like a shroud. Dropping my hands to the cold, hard floor, I took in my surroundings. Empty, barren walls loomed over me, and the memories of my night began to swirl together in a chaotic dance. Rose was nowhere to be seen. Did she escape, or was she trapped somewhere deeper, lost to the shadows? I rushed to my feet, forcing my mind to piece everything together. The whispers, those desperate cries pleading for help, echoed in my mind. Clara, the woman in white, the missing patient, the locket. Everything wrapped around me with confusion. Had I survived, or had I merely stepped deeper into another layer of unreality? Panic clawed at my throat as I stumbled towards the door. It creaked ominously when I pushed it open, but the corridor beyond felt strangely calm, untroubled by the darkness I had just escaped. With each step forward, memories hit me harder like waves crashing onto a rocky shore. I still felt the weight of the locket pressing against my conscience. What if I had left it behind? What if I had triggered something worse? I continued down the corridor, hoping to find a way out. It was curiously empty. All sounds had faded, leaving an uneasy silence hanging heavily around me. I had no idea how long I had been trapped, but something deep within me was unsettled. I could sense eyes watching from unseen corners, waiting for my next move. At last, I stumbled upon a staircase leading down into the depths of whatever this place was. Hesitant but resolute, I followed the path downward. Each step added weight to my heart, fear mingling with curiosity. The murmur of whispers was faint, but I could still catch snippets of the pleas. "Help us." At the bottom of the stairs, I faced a door with a cracked window. It looked familiar, like the entrance to the room where I encountered the shadows. I hesitated, heart thumping in my chest, then knocked softly. "Hello?" Silence. Then a soft scraping noise made my skin prickle. I felt compelled to push it open. As the door creaked ajar, I peered inside. The room felt strangely alive, flickering lights casting erratic shadows against the wall. But it wasn't empty. Clara stood there, her figure shimmering under the light. When she saw me, her gaze locked onto mine, desperate, yet inviting. "You came back," she said softly, her voice thick with unspoken words. You shouldn't have. I thought I'd escaped, I replied, unable to hide the tremor in my voice. Are you real, or am I still trapped? She stepped closer, her outline flickering like an old projection struggling to find focus. You're here. You need to understand. What you found isn't merely an object. It's a key to forgotten stories, to a sorrow that binds us. Your choice shapes whether this continues. My heart ached, blood rushing in my ears as I felt the weight of whatever this was. The chaos, the memories dissociated, and hanging there in the air like lost echoes. Will you help us? Clara asked, her voice trembling with urgency and despair. You're the bridge. Those who are stuck want to be heard. You need to unlock the truth. The shadows behind her shifted again. I remembered the figure who warned me to leave, and the panic washed over me once more. But what if it consumes me? Then we'll never be free. Her gaze softened, sorrow weighing heavily in her eyes. You have the choice. You deny the locket, or you accept that darkness too often hides in memories. It will unbind us, but only if you are willing. Suddenly the air felt electric. I still felt the pull of the shadows as if they wanted me to surrender. But did I want to? How deep did I want to go? In that moment, I stood at a precipice, a crossroads between the chains of the past and a fleeting chance of release. The choice weighed on me, echoing through the empty corridors of my mind. I don't know if I'm strong enough, I whispered, feeling the weight of despair. Strength comes from honesty, from facing it, Clara said, her voice intertwining with the whispers that circled us. Will you face it with me? In the distance I heard the winds of the past rushing nearer, eager to claim their tale. I took a deep breath, heart aching with uncertainty. Let's tell it. And just like that, my journey wasn't just about escape. It was a willingness to confront everything that awaited me in the shadows. As we stood together in the flickering light, I prepared to unlock the door, leaving both uncertainty and whispers lingering unanswered. For some stories exist within the spaces between reality and memory, forever unfinished. And I knew they'd haunt me long after this night was over.